Hello, welcome to Module 4, C-STARS IEP Technical Training. Here's our agenda for the training. First, we'll take a brief tour of C-STARS as a case manager. You will get more instructions on how to access C-STARS to complete your homework assignment later in this presentation. But please note, as you access C-STARS, you'll need to connect through VPN if you're working at home, and you'll want to access the C-STARS training site through the FCPS intranet page, which I will walk you through shortly. First thing we're going to do is have you get to the FCPS intranet page. Then what you'll do is you will navigate down to account sign-on. And then you'll go all the way down and select C-STARS. Here, it will take you to the C-STARS main page. If you need assistance, you can always email the C-STARS support team. Today, we are going to practice or look at creating an IEP through the C-STARS training site. So I'm going to select that site now. Then you will log in once you're told to do so with your FCPS username and login credentials. And remember, if you get stuck or something is wrong, you can always contact C-STARS. So let's go ahead and take a brief tour of the system. When you log into C-STARS, the first thing that you're going to see are the announcements. And believe it or not, the announcements page is one of the most important yet often neglected parts of C-STARS. It's going to tell you when C-STARS will be offline for maintenance. We also provide messages to teachers. So when you log in, get used to reading those announcements, and once you're done, you can go ahead and dismiss them, and they will go away. But not to worry. If you ever want to see your dismissed messages, then you would just press the Show Dismissed Messages button. Now, looking up at the top right-hand corner of the screen, it'll show you your name, and it's going to show you your school. Right now, I am focused to what we're calling Fairfax County Public Schools training. It's our training environment. But if you are at Laurel Hill Elementary, it'll have the school year and Laurel Hill Elementary. If you're at Edison High School, it's going to have the school year and Edison High School. Okay? And if it doesn't, I can show you how to change that now. So you'll notice your cursor starts to give you a pointer whenever you hover over this area. To focus down to your school, as we call it, you'll click on the focus area, and then you will select your drop-down menu, and you will find your school. And once you select it, you'll go ahead and press Save. Please keep in mind, you will not have access to all of the students in C-STARS. As an IEP case manager, you will only have access to students that you provide case management duties or that you have been invited to attend the IEP for another student. Next, there's a little gear. This little gear gives you the ability to change the contrast, allows you to adjust the width of the header, and it gives you the ability to change the color of your background. Here's a quick tip. You want to make sure that your colors will look good when you present, because as an IEP case manager, one of your roles will be to display the IEP to parents and the rest of the IEP team in a room or on Blackboard Collaborate in the future. So you may want to make sure that those colors, whatever you choose, are easy on the eye for everyone. The next little option here is the lock screen. And I like the lock screen because it helps us when we're working in CSARS and we need to step away briefly. Let's just say you're working and there's a fire alarm. You can press lock, and then what it will do is it will lock the screen for a certain amount of time. If you come back before that time, you enter in your password, and it takes you back to where you were. Sign out is going to sign you out of the application, and the next time it's going to ask for your full FCPS login credentials, and you'll then need to log in and navigate to the student that you were working to and the location in which you left off. The support option. The support option takes you to just a quick little page on where to get support. We want you to start with your school-based technical team. One of the things that you need to be careful is when you go to your school technical team and you say, I'm having trouble logging into CSTARS. What they're going to do is they're going to send you directly to the CSTARS or DSS support team. You might need to ask them to do a little bit of troubleshooting, for example. Maybe it's not so much that there's something wrong with CSTARS, but there's something wrong with PDFs not appearing on your screen, or that you're having trouble connecting to the network to access CSTARS. So you need to give your technical team as much information as you can. Then once it's determined that it is truly a software application, then you can go ahead and email the DSS support team. And here is their email right here. If you run into any procedural questions, you can also email the DPE help or the due process and eligibility team at dpehelp@fcps.edu. And then, of course, we know that there's times that you need access to help documents. Well, we have an online help system, and the online help system is located right here where it says help. So when I click on it, the first thing that I can do is I can look at any new features that have come into CSTARS, or if I need help with something related to the IEP, I can go and click on that tab. And then if I need more assistance on how to create or how to interact with the present level of performance tab, I can click on that, and it's going to give you step-by-step instructions on how to pull that up. And here they are right here. And of course, if you get stuck, you can always call the DSS support team. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to show you where you will navigate to all of your icons. And that starts right here with these three little lines. Moving forward, let's call this our navigation bar. And when you hover over the navigation bar, you see these subfolders. Special education teachers always and speech pathologists always get case manager access. So for now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the icons here. The first two icons, you have the student icon and you have the folders icon. What I'm going to tell you is these are the most important icons for your use as a special education teacher or case manager. The student icon is the icon that you will use when you are displaying CSTARS in a meeting to parents and anybody that the parents have invited outside of FCPS staff into the building. Because what that does is that allows you to bring up that individual student by name and ID number. And so then we only look at that information. But if you're working by yourself, let's just say, during your planning period, or unfortunately, we know as educators, we do a little bit of work in nights and weekends, and you're by yourself, or you're with an FCPS staff member only, you can look at your caseload list here on the folders tab, the folders icon. So let's go ahead and start with that folders icon. So when I click on it, it's going to deliver or return, all of the students that I case manage or where another staff member has asked me to attend the IEP meeting to speak on a specific student. So let's just say I have a caseload of 15 special education students that I case manage, that I'm responsible for developing, tracking, reporting IEP services on. Those 15 students will be here. But let's just say there's another student that I teach English and the IEP would like to invite me so I can speak to the student's progress. That student will be listed here too, and I'm going to show you how you get put on teams momentarily. So it shows you the students' names, and if you notice, when you hover over the students' names, hyperlinked. And just to let you know, the information in Training C-Stars is fictitious. Right next to it is the student's grade level, and then there's a hyperlink to the team tab, which we're going to look at in a little bit. We're going to ignore this for now, and eligibility in 504. Those are other modules that your school teams may ask you to look at later. But if we look at this student down here, this student has a quick link to their most recent IEP. And if we were to click on it, it would take us to that student's IEP, as well as a link to the IEP Documents tab, which I will show you shortly, and progress reports. Workflow, we will go over momentarily, but I'm going to navigate my window over just a little bit, and it's going to show you when the IEP is due. So clearly, this IEP is overdue. And C-Stars helps us by giving us a little red clock. And it says that it's overdue for the IEP, and it's also overdue for eligibility. You will learn very quickly that when you see red clocks, that means that you need to work to get things done as soon as possible because the student is out of timelines and out of compliance. But in the live environment, you do not see red clocks on all of your students unless they are truly out of timeline. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back up into the navigation bar. And we're going to go ahead and navigate down to the Case Manager folder. And we're going to tour the student view. Because the student view, when you click on it, like I mentioned, it takes you to a place where you can look up an individual student. But also, if you were to navigate back into folders and clicked on folders, and you clicked on the hyperlink of the student's name, then it would take you directly to that student view for this student. And so as a case manager or related service provider, you just need to be careful about how you're getting to the students. So let's go ahead and look at the information in the student screen. First, you have a demographics tab. That demographics tab gives you the student's name, last name, first name, middle, their ID number, their gender, their birth date, and their grade. It will also show you their home address. And if there was any contact information, which there will be in the live environment for our students, it would be listed here, such as parents' work number, cell phones, things like that. Email's going to be in here as well. As we scroll down further, it's going to show you the student's school of attendance and school of residence, as well as their enrollment date. So that's the generic demographic information that comes instantaneously from our Student Information System, or SIS. So none of this has to be entered in on your behalf. The Timeline tab gives you a visual representation, a visual timeline of where you are today and any due dates that might be coming up. So if we have an IEP that's been scheduled and in draft, let's just say for September, the system is going to give you a little line here, and it's going to show you that the IEP is in draft form and it's going to happen soon. The Compliance tab. The Compliance tab, again, gives you some Very important information, and I would look at that compliance tab for every one of the students that I case manage. And I would do it so that you can make sure that the right information is there, such as the IEP due date. So when was the student's last IEP would be here. When it's going to be reviewed would be listed here. When the student had their most recent eligibility date. And then finally, when that 3-year reevaluation due date comes due. It also will tell you the student's primary disability and any other disabilities additional that might be down here will be checked. So if you're looking at the paper file and you see that there's a discrepancy, reach out to your department chair or procedural support liaison as soon as possible. The next tab is the Parents tab. The Parents tab comes again, this information comes from our student information system, and we'll list the parent's name or guardians. Anybody that's listed here as that parent or guardian is going to be here. And if you want more information on them, you would just click on the link. And so if we want to check any specific information about this student's father, once I click on it, another window is going to open up. And when that happens, it's going to show you an email address, any other addresses such as home, mail, or work address, and any numbers. So what I'm going to start doing though, and this is a nice little tip for you too, is if you notice C-STARS runs on a series of pop-up windows, right? So this window, when I clicked on that link, the window popped up. Well, if we're not careful, we'll have a bunch of sub-windows stacked down at the bottom, kind of like this. And so to prevent that from happening, my suggestion would be to, up by your name, there is a white X. And if you click on that white X, it will close that sub window and it keeps just the windows that you need to look at rather than creating a whole bunch of windows that can confuse you later on. The next tab is the Transportation tab. The Transportation tab is not available for all students, as not all special education students require special transportation. Yes, there may be special education students that ride the general education or neighborhood school bus, but this particular tab outlines specific accommodations. The Team tab. The Team tab is going to be a very important tab, and you'll notice that your name should be listed here, and it should be listed as the case manager. If you find when you're doing your homework, you are not listed as the case manager, you need to stop and email the DSS support team so that they can make sure that you have access. So let's talk a little bit about this role here. The case manager role is for special education teachers and speech pathologists who case manage kids. Their security role in C-STARS is called case manager. But please note, when you sign documents, which you'll see later on in our training today, you will sign according to your job title: special education teacher, speech and language pathologist. So this is just a role here that you have. And if you are the one that's case managing the student, you need to have case manager so that you have full rights to that student's file in C-STARS. Now, if you've been invited to the meeting as a special ed teacher just to speak on a specific goal, then your name will be listed and it will have special education teacher after it. More on how to complete the Team tab in a moment. We're going to go ahead and skip over eligibility and 504. And we're going to go ahead and navigate over to IEPs. The IEPs tab is going to give you a list of all of the IEPs that have been completed for this student in C-STARS. Clearly, this student has no IEPs. So as soon as we initiate a draft, the first line is going to be a draft IEP. The IEP Documents tab, I like to call this section all of the related documents that might be given to parents or used for special education students in specific situations. Most of the documents won't be used all of the time, and then some we use for every student. For example, the first 4 documents here, the agenda, the parent information, ESY, and Medicaid billing information, are all PDFs, which are information that we can share with parents once we get to those parts of the IEP. But no matter what type of IEP that we're having, and yes, there's more than one, we always use the meeting notification contact log. That's to document that we've reached out to the parent to schedule a meeting, to reschedule a meeting, or to address a concern. Then below it, whenever we have a meeting, we have to send written notice after it's been scheduled, and this is where this document is. We're not going to go through all of them, but there are some other ones in here that happen every once in a while when a kid goes through the discipline process. We may need to look at the manifestation determination review process. Or if a required member of the IEP team was unable to attend, we need to get permission from the parent before we can proceed. So there are a bunch of documents in here that you will use depending on the situation. So I encourage you to look at them in the training environment once you are working on your homework. The next tab is the workflow tab. I'd like for you to think about the workflow tab as where you tell C-STARS what kind of IEP that you need. Yes, there's more than just one IEP. There's an initial IEP, an annual, an addendum with a meeting, an addendum without, and then if the student's a private school student, they may get an individualized services plan. So we need to tell C-STARS what documents to give me, and that's what the workflow is going to help us do. And we will look at that as well. And then, of course, historical documents. So once C-STARS has finalized and saved a document, it will always give a PDF of that document here. And so if you ever want to pull historical documents, you come here to this tab and you can pull documents. You can also upload or attach documents such as progress reports, data sheets, outside testing, teacher narratives, whatever information that needs to go with the IEP should be attached here. And just as a reminder, this information should match the official paper file in the schools. We like to say that C-STARS is our backup copy. So whatever documents you have attached and uploaded in C-STARS, we need to make sure that there's a hard copy in the legal paper file back at the school. So the next part of the presentation will show you how to complete items or tasks for students prior to IEP meetings. There's a bunch of tasks that you need to do, whether it's starting out the school year, or if you've just been given a new student, or you have an upcoming IEP. What we're going to do right now is show you what those are. So here we are in our agenda. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to log in. This could be once you have your access, or as you're completing your homework assignment, you need to kind of go back in, and now you're going to create the assignment. Now you're going to do all of your pre-meeting duties. So I'm going to pretend that I'm working on an IEP for this student here. And notice when I clicked the number next to the student's name, the row kind of highlighted a little bit. And it does that so that you can kind of focus in on the right student, because if you're not careful, sometimes you can select the wrong student. So the first thing that we're going to do here is to make sure that we have the right members, or all of the members that are on this student's IEP. And so we're going to go and add our IEP team members now. And I'm going to show you how I did that. If you noticed, I went and hovered over the edit link, and then I'm going to click that edit link, and a pop-up window is going to appear. And what I like to do as soon as a new window appears is I go ahead and I maximize my screen to give me the most real estate. And of course, your name should be listed here as case manager, because what you're about to do, none of the other members that you're going to add will have the ability to do this because their access will be different. So we know we've had required members of the IEP team. So from a procedural perspective, we have the special education teacher, which is you, a principal designee, and a general education teacher of the student. So what I thought we would do now is add some required members of the team and maybe some additional, just to kind of show you what it looks like if you're adding a very general IEP team. And it starts by clicking on the add button. So we have established that you are the special ed teacher on paper. Your role will be case manager, and now we're going to add that principal. So I'm going to click the add button. A new window will appear. And for training purposes, I've went ahead and just created some kind of just some fake accounts that even when you're doing your homework, you can use, because not every one of the teachers that you work with at your school will be in this training sandbox. So I would just make it easier on yourself and just use the following staff members. So the last name is going to be train, and the first name is going to be principal. And notice when I entered in the last name and the first name, and I can either press find or the enter key, the system retrieved the name that I wanted. And now I want to select that particular user. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the number next to the employee that I want, and then I'm going to press the green select button. And then the screen's going to close and return me back to the main team tab. And that's where you'll start to see us building our team. So now we have the special education teacher / case manager, the principal designee, and now we're going to add a general education teacher using the same steps. I will press the add button. I'm going to add now a general education teacher. And again, this is kind of a fake name. And just like I did before, I highlight the number next to the employee and I press the green select button. So you know as well as I do that at the very least you have a minimal amount of required members of the IEP team, but sometimes we have related service providers that also work with these students. So what you'll do is you'll add your related service provider as well by clicking on the add button and looking for their name. I go ahead and click the number next to their name and select. Here's a tip. You may want to build the teams with as many people that work with the students as possible. For example, if you have 2 principals in your building who take turns attending IEP meetings as the principal or their designee, add both. If the student works with multiple general education teachers, let's just say this is an elementary student that has their specials, so we'd want to add the music teacher or the PE teacher. You can add everybody. They may not be at the meeting, but what's nice about it is that they're available to put their names on the sign-in page if we need them to attend. So build your teams big with as many people as you can. Sometimes, for example, there are 2 speech pathologists in a school building, depending on the size. Add both, because we never know when both will work with that student, and we may need to have both attend the meeting. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pretend that an IEP is coming up. And like they taught you early on, we want to make sure you have plenty of time to schedule. So we're going to now jump over to the IEP Documents tab. And on the IEP Documents tab, we're going to go ahead and navigate down to line 5. Line 5 is where we document our contact. And if you remember early on from your procedural part of the training, you should contact the parents and schedule this IEP within a mutually agreeable date and time. In fact, notice here how it already has an edit link. You can click on that edit link. If your student does not have one and has a create link, go ahead and click on that. So when we open up our document, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to click the add button if there's not already a line for you to document below. Here is where you're going to put the date that you called the parent. And so for today's purposes, we're just going to use the current date. And then it's going to ask to select the type of contact. We're going to say we spoke to the parent by phone and that the reason for contact was to schedule the IEP meeting. The more information you can type in here, the better, to be specific. Then what C-STARS wants to know is who made that contact. And if it's you, you'll go ahead and click that little link and you'll search for your name and you'll press save. Now let's just say though, the next day the parent calls or emails and says that time and date no longer works. Then you can press add again and add a new communication line indicating that you called to reschedule. The more you can add the contacts here, the better it's going to be to prepare you. Once I'm done with this, then what I do is I go ahead and I white X out because I want to stay close to where I was the last time. And it's going to take me back to the IEP documents page. Now I want to send written notification of our scheduled date and time. Because it's not enough to just tell the parent, right? So we need to go ahead and send them a formal notice. And that's what this is, the IEP annual notice. And so you see here, I've got a create link. So I've highlighted it. I'm just going to follow it over a little bit and click on create. I'm going to maximize my screen. And this is a really good page in terms of when you start practicing or doing your homework, because it's got a lot of the fields that will be in the IEP, and that if you can kind of get yourself used to filling out this form, getting to major parts of the IEP will be easier for you. So I've got some buttons at the top that are grayed out, save and undo. I've got a delete, which is in red, print preview, validate, and finalize. The first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to look quickly at the demographics information, and this comes over from our SIS, our Student Information System. Then here is where we put our proposed meeting date, right? So I'm going to go ahead and select our meeting date. And for training purposes and for demonstration purposes today, I'm always going to use the current date. In the real world, clearly those dates will be in the future. And I'm going to select the time. So at 3:30 or 4:30, excuse me, p.m. is when we're meeting. Here, the system will default to the school. And then all I have to do is put the specific room number. Sometimes we want them just to report to the main office. That's fine. The primary purpose, we'll just say, is the initial IEP. And then between these sections here, I've got a gray bar here and a gray bar here. I'm going to go ahead because now you see that the save and the undo buttons have been activated. I'm going to go ahead and save. And that then makes sure that C-Stars has all of the information as of my last save. So if the power goes out or the network goes down, I have the information stored in our database. Then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to the scroll down, excuse me. I'm going to scroll down to the recipients page. So who gets this notice? Well, I'm sure they talked about it in the procedural section, but we know that for students who are in grade 8 or age 14, whichever comes first, the system is going to look at those two data elements, and it may remind you during validation that the student has to be invited. So for us, we're going to go ahead and check the box. If your student that you're using is an elementary student, no need to check it. So I'm going to check my box here. I'm between kind of sections. I just want you to get used to saving as much as you can. And then I want you to go down and select the parent recipients. We select both here, and I'm sure somebody mentioned to you early on that if there's an issue with parent custody or legal rights, please contact your administrator or due process and eligibility. We're going to press save for the staff that will be present at this meeting, and it starts with checking the required, at the minimum, roles that need to be there. So we know that we selected on the team tab a general education teacher. You're the special education teacher and the principal designee. We do not select case manager because case management is what you do. Okay? So you are listed here as special education teacher. But let's remember, we also added a speech pathologist. We're going to hit save or press save up at the top. Next, there are other service providers that we need to think about. For example, a language interpreter. Okay? That's an FCPS language interpreter. Save. Or by chance, there may be an additional general education teacher. So this general education teacher may be the math teacher, but maybe you are also going to invite the history teacher, the history general education teacher. Okay? Press save. The only people that come here are or checked in these boxes or typed down below are Fairfax County Public School employees. Any parents, advocates, attorneys, anybody that the parents have indicated that they're going to bring to the meeting, they do not get listed here. We will put them on the cover page later. If there are some additional county or state resources or agencies attending this student's IEPs, you will get that information from your department chair or social worker or administrator. And if that's the case, you will check the ones that are invited. But remember, whoever you invite, that's not the parent or guardian, you may need to receive consent to share information. So for now, we're going to skip that section, and we're to make our way down to the contact section. This is always grayed out right here. This is letting the parents know if they have any questions they can contact, or procedural questions they can contact due process and eligibility. And then here's the phone number. And whoever this letter is coming from, their name will be here. So you need to check with your school. Will the letter come from you as the case manager, or are all letters coming from the principal? And you're going to want to put that person's name here. And you do that. If you need to change the name, you can just click that little chain link, and then it'll go ahead and let you select who you want to change the name to. You want to make sure that the contact person phone is an approved phone number. Remember, not all classroom phones ring from outside, so you need to ask if you have a special education office or if they should be putting the school main number in. You're going to press save up at the top once we're done. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and validate. We never press print preview. Print preview at this stage is for our eyes only. It's to kind of see how it looks before you would send it. But you're going to get that when you finalize. So for now, I would stay away from print preview and I would validate. And validate's going to go and check for errors. And what you're hoping for is to get a message like this that says there are no validation errors found in the document. But of course, I want to show you how to fix some errors. And sometimes it happens because we're busy and we forget. You have students that are in crisis, something's happening, and you're filling this out, and you forget to put in a meeting time. If you press validate, I have to press save. If you go ahead and press validate now, the system's going to return an error. So you need to make sure exactly it is what you're supposed to be doing here. So we need to go ahead and put in that meeting date. And then we save, and then we close, and then of course we'll revalidate. Next is when we finalize it and get an official PDF that we can either email or send home via the US Postal Service or in the student's backpack. So I'm going to press finalize. And as you can see, it's returned that PDF. And it's basically a form letter where we have gone in and filled in all of the elements. And because there was a mother and a father, and we selected a student, all three will get the same letter. Clearly, if they all live at the same home, they can all be put in the same envelope. But this is where if parents are divorced or there's an alternative living arrangement, we could then send to the respective addresses. So this one, I'm going to go ahead and X out at the top of this PDF here. But just know it is important to finalize the letter and get the PDF because it's really going to help you once you've developed your IEP. So now what we have up at the top by my name, there's a little refresh button. Once you press that, kind of gives C-Stars a little kind of slaps it in the back of the head a little bit. It says, hey, make sure you give me the most recent information on my page. And so if you notice now, it says view list next to my notice letter, which is great. But like I said, sometimes, parents change their mind or they get the notice and they look at their calendar and they realize that they have a previous engagement. And then that's when they call you and tell you that they need to reschedule. And so if that's the case, you may need to send a follow-up notice. And that's why now what you do is you click on View List. And View List is going to show you that very first one that you sent to the parent. But up here, it's going to give you an opportunity to create a new one or an updated one. We're not going to do that right now. I'm just going to go ahead and click the white X. And then what we're going to do is you would send home your notice letter with any of the other documents that parents might need, such as the agenda or the parent information for IEP. Make sure that goes home with the notice letter. Parents need the opportunity to tell us either prior or bring it to the meeting as notes of what they want to share with the IEP team. So now we have prepared so far with this IEP. We've built our teams. We've come up with a date. We've contacted the parent. We've come to consensus on the date. We've wrote the parent an official letter confirming the date. to go in and draft our IEP goals and to get ready for the meeting. Okay, let's tell C-Stars what type of IEP that we need. And we're going to do that by going to workflow. And so when I press on the workflow tab, it's going to take me to my button here. And C-Stars is going to ask you to make a decision. You make your decision, you press the button, and it's going to give you a question. Say, what is the next step to perform? Please note, anytime you're in the workflow, whether it's training or in real life, always choose the date circled in blue because it's looking for the date you're interacting with this field. Then our action, here are all the IEPs and other documents you might be creating in CSTART. So I'm going to go ahead and select that this is an initial IEP. Now remember, that's what I'm showing you. You may be using an annual. So for training purposes, it doesn't matter, but just remember that when you're filling one out, you know, in the real circumstance, you should know which one it is. And then I press save. And now you need to give us more information. So we need to click on this sub workflow link right here that I'm circling over, hovering over with my cursor. When I click on it, a new window is going to open, and I'm going to maximize it because there's some other decisions that I have to make. I have to tell C-Stars that I'm creating a new IEP. And I have to tell C-Stars the date that I made this decision. Don't get hung up on the word completion. For us, remember, always choose the date that's circled. Then you press save. And now what happens, it gives you a little link to the draft here. And you can click on that link and it'll take you to the draft. But I'd rather show you how you're going to get to the draft because you're going to be working on it a couple of weeks before the meeting. So for today's purposes, I'm going to have us just hit the white X out. I'm also going to hit the white X out of the main workflow page. And I'm going to go back to my folders. And if the system doesn't default you to the folders, remember you can always go up to the navigation bar, the case manager subfolder, and access the folders this way. But for our purposes right now, we're going to say that the system took us back to the folders. And right now we don't see anything in here. That's because we need to refresh our screen. And what happens is it moves it from the general case management list down into its own category. And this is where we start dividing things up by category. So C-Stars wants to let you know that you are working on, or you now have access to, a draft IEP. And that once the IEP is done and all the processes have been done, it's going to bring it back up here for you just to case manage. But anything down below is kind of telling you, you know, where you are in the process. So this is a draft IEP, and you can see it because it's got a little IEP with a pencil in it. And so here is where I can go ahead and click on that little icon, and it'll take us to the draft IEP. And I'm going to go ahead and maximize my window. And it's going to give you all of the pages or tabs. So we're not going to work on the cover page right now because these tabs, the cover and the transition and even the present level, we're going to focus on during the training that focuses on tasks at the meeting. We're basically still setting up. These are things that we're doing before the meeting. So what we're going to do right now is focus on drafting those goals. You're going to click on the Need and a COM tab. Just remember, when you're on the need and a com page and you have to add a goal or a short-term objective, always think of the word actions and click on that actions drop-down menu. And when you click on it, a little box will populate and it'll say add area of need. So I'm just going to show you how to navigate the system. So here you can check the general area of need, and I'm just going to choose reading. And then my sub area of needs is going to identify the area of reading that the student might have difficulty with. So I'm going to check decoding. Now, please note, there's an other box for both. That's if the IEP team can't agree on the phrase or the word, or there's a completely different area of need. So you either have something from the dropdown or you're typing, but do not use both. This is where you enter or document the student's strengths as they relate to the area of need. I'm going to go ahead and type those in now. And as I type them in, if I need to see or expand the box, I can just come up here to the X where it'll say toggle full screen. And if I press it, it's going to give you and expand the window so that you can see exactly what you have typed. Okay? But then if I want to close it and move on to my needs, I can go ahead and type that information in as well. So I've gone ahead and I've typed in my needs, all based on data. The next thing that I'm going to do is enter in my impact statement. Once I have my strengths, my needs, and my impact statement, I go ahead and I press save up at the top. I would not press save before this because the system's just going to get mad because it's actually looking for you to complete these 3 boxes before you save. And once that happens, then the main need and a com window starts to populate with information. So if you see up at the top left-hand part of the window, it shows that we've identified our area of need, which is reading and decoding. The next part is asking us to identify the documentation that was used. That documentation is important. It's your data. So you want to make sure that you select all the various data types that you use to determine that this was an area of need. And so for now, we've identified the areas of need for C-stars, and then we go ahead and press save. Now we have another action, and that action is to create a goal, to tie the goal to the area of need. And so now when I click on actions, C-stars is going to say, okay, you want to add a goal to the reading area of need. Yes, so I'm going to select that. And now C-stars is going to give me a new window. And in C-stars, when you see a green field, it means it must be addressed before you press save. So we're going to name our goal. This is an internal label for the system. So let's make it as accurate and meaningful as we can. So I'm going to say reading goal. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type the goal. Here's my goal. I don't have anything else to do here. And I'm going to press save. And once that happens, it brings us back to that main window. Now we see we have an area of need for reading decoding, and now we have our reading goal. And if we scroll below, now we have to use the same checkbox that we did to identify how progress on the goal will be measured. And in this case, I'm going to type in, maybe I'm going to say classwork or whatever. And I'm going to press save. Cases, I'm going to show you how to add a short-term objective to a goal. And again, it happens up by actions. So if I go into actions, now it's going to say you're going to add an objective to this reading goal. And when I select it, here's my green box again. And this time I'm going to keep it very simple. Objective 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to enter my goal. Short-term objective, excuse me. And I'm going to press save. Now, just remember, and I'm sure they told you this in the procedural training, to use short-term objectives, you need to have a minimum of 2. So right now, here's my goal, and here's my first short-term objective. If I click on actions, though, it's only giving me the option to delete. I need to tie it back to the goal. So if I click on the goal, the reading goal, up here in the top right left-hand corner, excuse me, when I go to actions, now I can add a second goal. I'm going to go ahead, once the window opens, add my second goal in, and I'm going to press save. So if you noticed, we now have in C-STARS an area of need for reading decoding, a reading goal, and the reading short-term objectives. But let's just say we want to add a math goal. Right now, if I keep going up to actions, it's only going to allow me to delete. And if I have to delete, I've got to delete backwards going up. So I'd have to click on the objectives, delete all my objectives, then my goal, then my area of need. But I want to add a new area of need. And we're going to do that by coming up here to the top, up by my name, and pressing the refresh view button. Kind of takes us back to the way we found the system when we first opened up the draft. Except now C-STARS has a reading area of need and goal, but if I go to actions now I can add a new area of need. So to add a goal using our goal builder, so I'm going to say we want to look and tie goals to the state curriculum standards. So I'm going to press this radio button here. And when that happens, a builder appears at the bottom. Then I just choose the curriculum I want to look at for my area of need. So we said math as the area of need. So I'm going to choose math as my main curriculum, and we know that this is a 7th grader, okay? We know that this is a 7th grader, but we also know some of our special education students tend to be behind in basic skills. And so while we want to look at goals, their current curriculum, we can go back a grade level or two to find a curriculum strand that aligns to what they're currently working on now. So I'm going to go back, let's just say the student's working at a 5th grade level. And so once I've done that, the system then is going to go in and show you our state curriculum strands on things that the student may need to work on. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and choose, let's just say, one of the curriculum strands. When you do that, it populates it down at the bottom. But remember, this is the state curriculum strand. That may be too broad for a student to work on. Maybe we need to identify a little bit more, have the student go down a little bit further. So maybe we're going to go into those behaviors, and maybe we're going to say that the student needs to describe what a right angle is. That's our behavior. That may be where we are working with the student. Then what we want to do is we want to look at the condition. So if I go to maybe math content and I go to conditions, maybe we're using a manipulative to figure out, to describe the right angles. And then the criteria, maybe trial-based on 4 out of 5 trials. Now, edit it and turn it into a proper goal. Okay, so now press the save button. And once the goals have been cleared by somebody in your department, whether it's a fellow teacher, a department chair, a lead teacher, or your mentor, you can send them home to the parent. This is the one time you can press the print preview button, and I'm going to do that now. Please don't send the entire IEP home. My recommendation would be to identify, okay, I would identify the goal pages. Okay, so here, this is page 2 and page 3. And what I would do is I would go ahead and print these as a PDF. Just say pages 2 and 3. And again, this could be different on your IEP, okay? But then when I do that, the system, and I may have to save it. Then what it's going to do is it's going to give us just those pages. This will allow the parent to review, ask questions, come to the meeting informed. And so at this point in the process, you have done as much as you can in C-STARS to set up for the tasks that will happen during the meeting. Thank you.